Welcome to the Twist News. I'm Erika Grey. Today I'm going to talk about Africa's revenge. In 2001, the African Union formed with the 55 nations of Africa, and they formed kind of with the same idea of the European Union to grow economically and politically, and they've actually made strides, and it is now a very promising continent with potential. And what we see now are the world's empires courting Africa, from the European Union, the United States, Russia. Vladimir Putin just spoke and promised the Africans free grain, financial help. And we also see China courting the African Union. And the African Union now is in a position to enact its revenge. But first, I want to talk about why are the foreign powers scrambling to court Africa, which this is the title of an article that was written by the Center for Strategic and International Studies by Cameron Hudson. And according to Mr. Hudson, he talks about the United States efforts and how last month Vice President Kamala Harris became the 5th high-ranking U.S. official to visit the continent just this year. But according to this article, it states, but the United States is not the lone courtier. Russian, Chinese, French, and English officials are crisscrossing the continent too with their own promises of political partnerships, humanitarian assistance, splashy development projects, and reforms to post-war international institutions that for decades have been seen by Africans as perpetuating paternalist power dynamics. So why the scramble? Well, the scramble is in part what's written in this article, which is Africa is home to many of the rare earth critical minerals essential to powering the next generation of innovation and green growth. From copper to cobalt, the supply chains for products ranging from solar cells to next generation batteries all start in Africa, and securing reliable access to these minerals, currently dominated by China, is imperative to U.S. economic and national security. He goes on to state that Africa is experiencing a population boom unequaled in the world today, and that many cities and countries within Africa will feature some of the largest population centers, which also means working people who work and can prosper the economy. And there's a number of young people in Africa who will make up that grouping. So the nations now are courting Africa, but this is now the time of Africa's revenge, because Africa remembers its history. And there's no love lost between the nation of Africa and the America, as well as with the European countries, which also had their hand in the continent and slavery, such as the French, France, Belgium, and other countries as well within Europe that were part of the colonialism and part of the slave trade. And I want to talk a little bit about America, because within my circle, and I'm in evangelical circles, it's almost cliche to state that America was founded on Christian principles. And every time I hear that, I cringe. Because what kind of Christian principles have a slave trade and commit atrocities against a people that are so horrific that they're on par with ISIS or anything barbaric out of the Middle Ages? And to treat a people that cruel and that vicious, and then state that this is formed on Christian principles, there's something wrong with that. And then not only were those people oppressed and tortured, but also, and torture, various forms of torture, not the, standard inner room torture, but various forms of torture. But then when slavery is eliminated, now those Africans are not allowed businesses and they're not allowed to prosper. And a new wave of hatred and atrocities takes place, giving birth to the start of the problems in the ghettos. There's an old saying that every dog has their day. Well, guess what? This now is a time for Africa's revenge, and you can see it when you're tuning in to these press releases of these governments that are trying to form these ties, and you can see the look in the faces of the African leaders and their statements. They're not having it. And what's happening is they're gearing towards the nations that didn't have that kind of history with their people. They don't forget. So somebody may say, well, but that was so many years ago. Well, nations tend to hold on to their history, just like between the Chinese and the Japanese and the French and the English. And the Germany now is within the European Union to contain it within the EU institutional structure so that World War I and World War II will not then happen as a World War III under the leadership of Germany, because now Germany is quelled, because that history is not forgotten. That history spurred the formation of the European Union, the institutionalizing of the coal and steel production of France and Germany to prevent the two nations from entering into war among other nations to keep Germany contained. So yes, Africa has not forgotten. Africa is not going to forget. And you can almost be guaranteed that going forward, Africa is going to give priority to these other nations that don't have this history. And now, like no other time, because of the technological age, because of the greening of policy, Africa is rich in those materials. So this is going to be interesting to see how this develops. And I'll be reporting it on this channel. But from what I can see, this is now the time of Africa's revenge. Africa is not forgetting. Africa is now becoming in a real position of strength. It is sitting on literally gold mines and knows it, but it's strong enough to know it. It's strong enough not to let itself be oppressed anymore. And also, it's making decisions not only for its future, but also based on its past history. For more from the Twist News, stay tuned, subscribe to this channel, and check out the Amazon store, and stay tuned for more.